May on the Way, Chapter 1. Hope flickered with the phone call. The woman answered and talked for a moment. "Yeah," she said, setting aside the crumb-littered plate. "Okay, that'll be fine. They can come see the princess at 1 o'clock. The princess. When she heard the name she was called, she sat up. Something was different in the woman's voice, something difficult to interpret. "Yeah, we could talk about my money then. Yeah, be sure they bring it." The princess could hear resignation, maybe even a little failure in the woman's voice. She couldn't directly see the woman, but there was a dandy reflection in the stove door if she looked just so. She had figured that reflection trick out herself, even as young and inexperienced as she was back then. Later, she would discover that the woman also was quite young, in people years, only 20. With one hand on the counter, the woman listened for a moment. Then her shoulders slumped. "Okay, we'll see. Whatever. She'll be ready. Goodbye." There was a breathy then quiet, except for the flick of the cigarette lighter. That particular morning in May, before the call, the princess was lying in her cell, senses dulled from the monotony, the bed, an old ripped gray towel that matched her hair. "At least I'm not thirsty, but the food is always the same. And I've tried everything, being good, being bad. The last time they let me all the way outdoors, I went berserk. It had been so long," she remembered with a shudder. "They almost didn't get me back in the cell. Now they don't let me out anymore at all. Even if I could stretch my legs or just feel the sun, that would be something. I even have to use the bathroom in the corner. It's embarrassing, and it reeks." Just as she was wondering why the woman was sobbing into her sleeve this time, the monster stabbed a fat finger through the bars, his green eyes meeting her brown ones at the same level. "Missed," she thought, shifting position quickly. The only break in the boredom that made up her life was the monster, and that wasn't a good thing. She had decided several months back that his favorite pastime was tormenting her. "I guess he's bored too," she'd concluded. If it wasn't so dreadful, it might have been amusing. The toddler might get down low and sneak over to her cell to torment her, out of the sight of the woman because she'd yell at him. Sometimes he was armed with a plastic pistol. When he took aim and shot, it didn't make much noise, but she always ended up drenched. He would cackle, especially if he hit the bullseye, her nose or mouth, so she hacked and gagged. Or sometimes he held a stuffed toy just out of reach and begged her to try for it. Come on, princess, bet you can't get it," he would sneer. She gave up trying after a while. "What's the point?" she thought. "He always jerks it back before I can grab it to play. Some game." Lately, she glared from a back corner when she heard him approach, and usually, after a few taunts, he left. But sometimes, like now, he would sneak in and try to poke her. He wiggled those tempting fingers through the bars, teasing her, but she didn't take the bait. Then he parked himself on his plump behind and pointed, mocking her bad teeth. "Wolfie!" Their eyes met. Abruptly, he jammed his entire hand through the bars, way past the wrist, aiming for a fistful of whiskers. The princess darted out of reach, pasting herself against the cold, stainless steel wall. "Missed twice," she thought. He tried to yank his arm back out, but instead got it good and stuck. "Now's a chance for some payback," she thought, watching him squirm. Princess rather enjoyed his struggle in spite of herself. But it's not really worth another beating, so she watched from the safety of the shadows. Panicked, he twisted, wriggled, and turned. "Ow!" It jerked free so quickly that he was off balance and plopped down again. "Shoo!" he menaced. "You almost got me again." "Perhaps he is remembering my small victory last week," she mused, seeing his frown. She had scored when he didn't remove his pointer finger quickly enough, and it bled all over the floor. The beating had almost been worth it. That smelly bandage was still there. "I reckon there will be a nice scar to remind him." He took a short breath, then tucked his legs under, palms flat on the floor to balance, and stood up. She prepared herself, watching him contemplate his next move. What is he thinking? She watched the disturbance of thoughts scamper across his face. He's still an enigma, That kid is raising himself, and he has a serious mean streak like his father." A little shiver surged through her at the thought of him. The monster grabbed the bars and glanced toward the kitchen. He whispered, "No fun if Mama doesn't watch." He turned his attention back to the princess. Even in the semi-dark, he could see her small mouth was slightly parted, black lips pulled back, white teeth bared. Wolfy indeed, though she was only a small schnauzer. With his target out of easy reach, he turned his miserable attention onto his mother, deftly switching from one game to the next. He produced a wooden block from his shorts pocket and rattled it along the bars, all the while keeping his eyes fixed on Mama's back. Too quiet, the princess thought, though the racket hurt her own ears. She watched him exaggerate all his movements, now stomping down the hall on the scratched, filthy floors, now slamming the door. Wham! This is all part of the sport. Princess dropped down and tried to bury her ears into the thin gray towel before the scorching. The rules of this contest long established, the woman marched into the hall and shrieked, "Get away from her! I've told you 1,001 times! Get away! Go watch TV!" But the undisputed winner of this round was already out of sight. After they were gone, Princess sat up and wondered, why? This life was all she knew, and there was little consideration of the needs of a vivacious puppy. "I need to jump and run and play. I'm going wild," she thought as she moved around in the cramped crate. "Will I ever get out of here? How will I manage it?" Her ears tilted back while ideas wandered a while, then focused. A plan began taking shape. "First things first. I'll have to start with the latch, then make it out the door this go-around." She waited until the cigarette smoke whisked down the hall to her cell. Not yet. When Princess heard the TV blaring and the wooden block smashing into the living room wall, she decided it was time. She began cautiously working the latch with her tongue and teeth and thought, there are some benefits to a bad underbite. She wrestled the latch this way and that for quite a while. "Oh, piffle, I can't get it undone, I can't." She turned her head sideways and tried once more. "I just can't do it," she whined and backed away. Tears started to come, but after a moment she regained control of her thoughts. "No, can't say can't. I have to keep trying." And she did. "After my last breakout, they sure fixed this door." The man the monster called Abba had been home for only a few days then. "His father isn't here often, which is okay by me. He's meaner than the woman and the monster put together. And it only took him a moment to change out the lock. Now it's really hard to open. In fact, it seems impossible." Fear nipped, but she refused to let it win. She kept trying different ways to open the latch, but nothing worked. "Think now, think." She moved away from the challenge and took a deep breath, then let it out. She ignored the TV, the crashing blocks, the soft sobbing of the woman. She sat for the moment and simply listened to the birds outside. Birds. Her mind drifted with their lilting songs. "Sunshine, a soft breeze, lying on my back in the grass. What are they saying?" Her eyes closed so she could better hear. "I don't know. It's so pretty, though." She sat a while just enjoying their music, their freedom. Refreshed and emotions better under control, she was somewhat cheered. "The sun is always shining above the clouds. There are many skills I've not yet mastered, like understanding those birds for one thing, and like escaping." She stood again and started thinking as she walked in a tiny circle. That's all she could do. "That's right," she said to herself. "There's still a lot to learn and a lot to live for." As she started on the latch again, she finally allowed herself to review that last time she tried to break out, to remember and to learn. It was a drizzly afternoon. She'd been toying with the latch out of sheer boredom, then it opened. With 4 feet full throttle, she had made it as far as the kitchen, desperate for a way out. But there was no place to go. I remember I stumbled and slipped on the slick floor and... She sat down and caught her breath. "I knocked over the trash." Dejected, the memory came flooding back. She trembled as the woman appeared in her mind, and she heard those stinging words. "You sorry, ungrateful little wretch! Look what you've done! Now you're trapped! I'm going to get you and make you pay!" She screamed at her son. "Get in here and help me!" The princess relived the scene as if in slow motion, then fast forward. "I could hardly think with all the shouting." She could still feel the burn from the woman's glare. "Next time, better planning, dry feet." The memory was so raw. She half ducked as she relived the foot smashing her ribs, then being airborne and crashing into the fridge. When I came to, I remember the woman yelling again for the monster. I think I darted towards the back door, then paws, feet, and hands were everywhere, skidding, slipping, grabbing. She calmed her breathing, forcing herself to analyze the episode. They finally cornered me, then it went dark. The woman slung that huge striped bath towel over me, so heavy and big. My chin slammed on the hard floor. She shuddered. I tasted blood, and my feet wouldn't go where I told them. As if to make up for it now, she started pacing and panting. I growled and snapped and struggled. I fought hard, even when they slung me back into this cell. She gulped a breath and staggered to the grimy water dish, lapped a few sips, and sat in the corner to whimper. And I've not been out since. A forlorn tear made its escape and splattered onto the newspaper floor as she heard the woman holler for the monster to get in here and eat your fish sticks. The princess watched him burst through the door, straight-arming it into the wall. He might be short, but he's powerful. We're alike in that way, she thought. She took a deep, long breath. Rightio. I remember that was the very day I decided I've got to get out of here. I'm going crazy. They never let me out to run or play anymore. Then that horrible scene. She stood and peered through the bars. And the next time I do get out, I don't care what I have to do. I'm escaping for good. But how will I do it? What will happen when I do? She allowed herself a little smile, optimism kicking in. And what will the monster say about it? If she knew what death was, you might have thought she would have wanted to die during the dark moments that made up her life. But not her. She was a survivor. And something in the woman's response to that phone call had given her hope.